Toxic chemicals have been used in warfare since ancient times. For example, chemicals have been used to contaminate water sources used by the enemy, and arrows have been dipped in chemical poisons to increase their deadliness. Chemical weapons were used by both sides during World War I. Since then, chemical weapons have been the most used and widely proliferated weapon of mass destruction. As mentioned previously, the first large-scale use of deadly agents was perpetrated by Germany near Ypres, Belgium, in 1915 when its troops dispersed chlorine gas. In the early days of chemical warfare, choking agents such as chlorine and phosgene were crudely released from canisters and carried over enemy lines by the wind. Blister agents, such as mustard, came into wide use after 1917. By the end of the war, both sides had used a combined total of 124,000 tons of chemical weapons. Between the two wars, Italy used mustard gas on a limited scale during its invasion of Ethiopia, then known as Abyssinia. In the late 1930s, more potent chemical weapons agents, particularly nerve agents, were discovered. In particular, German scientists developed Tabun in 1937 and sarin in 1939. Chemical weapons were not used on battlefields in Europe during World War II. Japan, however, used chemical weapons against Chinese troops using mustard gas most frequently. During the Cold War, chemical weapons were produced and stockpiled in great quantities by the United States and the USSR. Both developed nerve agents, including the highly potent V-series agents, such as VX. The United States also used chemical herbicides, such as Agent Orange, on a large scale during the Vietnam War. Iraq researched, developed, stockpiled, and deployed chemical weapons, obtaining precursor chemicals and production facilities from a number of Western countries. It used chemical weapons, including mustard gas and Tabun, against Iran on many occasions during the 1980 to 1988 Iran-Iraq War. Iran also used chemical weapons during the Iran-Iraq War, though to a much lesser extent. The destruction of the Iraqi chemical arsenal was verified by the United Nations Special Commission for Iraq in the late 1990s. On August 21, 2013, sarin was used against Syrian civilians in the suburbs of Damascus. It is estimated that more than 1,400 people were killed in the attack and many more were injured. The use of sarin was confirmed by laboratory analysis of blood and tissue samples collected from used rockets and affected people. The UN mission to investigate allegations of the use of chemical weapons in the Syrian Arab Republic submitted a report to the United Nations Secretary General with conclusive evidence confirming the use of sarin. However, it did not attribute its use to any party in the conflict. In addition to their widespread use by states, chemical weapons have been sought and used by terrorists. Chemical terrorism is the calculated use of a chemical agent by a non-state actor or a group against civilians with the aim to cause harm or fear in order to achieve political, religious, or ideological goals. Most notably, the Japanese apocalyptic group Aum Shinrikyo manufactured sarin gas and dispersed it on 2 occasions. Aum Shinrikyo used sarin in 1994 in what is known as the Matsumoto incident. At Matsumoto, Aum Shinrikyo operatives released sarin in a residential area, killing 8 people and injuring hundreds more. However, the most notorious and deadly instance of chemical terrorism was the group's attack on the Tokyo subway in 1995. Because the sarin used in this attack was crudely produced with a purity of about 30% and inefficiently dispersed from punctured plastic bags, the subway attack killed only 12 people and injured hundreds more. As demonstrated by Aum Shinrikyo's chemical weapons program, a person possessing a master's degree in chemistry and having access to the required chemicals and equipment could produce chemical weapons. However, in view of the poor results of the Tokyo subway attack, it is clear that additional expertise is required in, for example, weapons engineering and aerosol dispersion before a terrorist group can successfully produce and use chemical weapons. The ability of proliferant states and possibly terrorist groups to develop chemical weapons is facilitated by the dual-use nature of chemical weapons agents, precursors, production equipment, and dispersal devices, making many of them obtainable on the open market. In addition, production processes for chemical weapons agents are widely published in open-source chemical journals and the chemical patent literature. In this module on chemical weapons, you will learn what chemical weapons are, how to detect their use and diagnose their effects, what regimes are in place to control and destroy chemical weapon stockpiles, and how to defend against the use of chemical weapons.